Political participation is the new cutting edge of the civil rights movement. And what black leadership is trying to do today is to get black Americans, who are 10% of the total electorate in this country, as zealous and as fired up and as committed and as active and as aggressive and as sophisticated in politics as they were during the protest movement of the 1960s.
We also serve notice here and now that if we have anything to do with it, the days of taking black and poor votes for granted is over. Let it be understood that we say this not in a spirit of self-arrogance, but as a natural consequence of our firm belief that the legislative and executive branches of government must be more accountable to the more neglected of our citizens than they have been in the past.
I believe that politics is the best available nonviolent means of changing how we live.
I just felt that there was some need to correct some of these problems, to solve some of these problems. And I thought that the best way to do it was through the political system.
So by being a part of the justice system as a judge, I feel that I am making an impact on the social, economic, and political life of my community.
The registration, the voting, the participation of blacks in the democratic process is bringing about a new sense of hope, and not just a new sense of hope and a new sense of optimism, but it also bringing about a sense of economic parity. Well, black men and women are being elected. We see people getting decent housing, people getting better jobs, streets are being paved, roads are being paved. Some of the things that black people have designed for many, many years are now being ushered in because of the involvement of blacks in the political process.
Except for a brief period following the Civil War, black Americans' participation in the American political process was minimal. With limited political power, their needs and desires often went unmet. But times changed, and a new breed of leaders have emerged, drawing forth the strength, the courage, and the determination to make the political process also work to the advantage of black people.
I think it is fair to say that where black Americans are today in terms of using politics and political participation as the new cutting edge of the civil rights movement really takes its beginning in the civil rights movement of the 1960s. You recall at that time, that was a time of protest, of seeking to redress certain grievances, trying to get laws changed, laws having to do with patterns of segregation, laws having to do with discrimination in employment, in education, in almost every walk of life, especially in the South, but also in some other parts of this country. And that's where we know the names of those great civil rights leaders, Dr. Martin Luther King, John Lewis, and members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and many others. And they led marches, and they suffered, and some died. But progress came out of that. First of all, Congress passed a public accommodations law, which said that it was unlawful to deny a black American or anyone the opportunity to take part in a public accommodation or to eat in a restaurant. One of the more significant developments was the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The Voting Rights Act finally, long overdue, said this government put itself on the side of assuring that every citizen had the opportunity to participate in an unfettered way in the political process of this country.
In addition, the General Accounting Office...
There are 18 black elected officials in the United States Congress. The highest ranking is Republican Senator Edward Brooke. Senator Brooke sits on many important committees, including the powerful Appropriations Committee.
And because of this, Senator Magnuson and I would recommend that the committee overturn the deferral and make the funds available to the hospital immediately.
Any discussion? You so moved.
I so moved, Mr. Chairman. Well, I certainly didn't believe I could have been a senator when I started off my political career, so-called, because, as I said, I ran first unsuccessfully for a state legislative position. I ran a second time and was defeated. Both were very close elections. And then 8 years later, I ran for Secretary of State in Massachusetts, and again I was defeated. So I was defeated 3 times before I won an election. And after that, I ran for Attorney General and won that election and served 2 terms as Attorney General. And when Senator Saltonstall retired, I then had the strongest political organization in the state and had gained some public awareness and public approbation for my work, and I just decided I'd run for the United States Senate. I felt that that was a place that I could do the most good, and being the only black in the Senate, my constituency not only includes Massachusetts, but includes blacks all over this country who look to me for leadership in the United States Senate. I would be for it if it applied to low and moderate income people, but now does this apply to all renters, no matter what they pay for rent? Suppose you're paying, it may sound strong to some people, but some people pay as much as $5,000 a month and more for rent. Now would that person be entitled to a tax relief under those circumstances and under this particular piece of
the argument
legislation?
that Senator Buckley makes, which I think is important, is that over half of the people who rent earn $5,000 a year or less, whereas only about 13% of all of those who earn over $25,000 a year rent.
To assist the senator in conducting the affairs of his office, his legislative staff briefs him regularly on a wide variety of issues.
Don't get the tax treatment, whereas those who own their own houses.
Significantly, Senator Brooke, a black, was elected in a state 98% white, indicating that many whites who once sought to deny blacks the vote could now vote for a black. Senator Brooke reflects on that change.
Its time has come. I mean, it's the evolution. It's, you know, it couldn't have lasted as it has forever. It's been coming for a long period of time, just as the end of apartheid and minority rule in southern Africa is coming to an end, because the time has come. There were times when it was accepted. It was accepted by Africans. Education, intelligence, the drive within man to achieve his equality, and the piece of the action, as some have called it, or his turf, is something that you just can't control. You just can't suppress forever. So when the time comes, it happens.
In the state of Alabama, during the early 60s and the mid 60s, there were several 100,000 of black people of voting age, but very few were registered to vote. As a matter of fact, in the heart of the Black Belt, in Selma, a small town in Alabama, that had only about 2.1% of the black people of voting age registered in 1965. Today in Selma, more than 70% of the blacks of voting age are registered to vote, and 5 members of a 10-member city council happen to be black. In Greene County, Alabama, during the early 60s, very few blacks were registered, but today that county is controlled by black. The highest elected official of the county is a young man, Thomas Gilmore, who is the sheriff.
To Sheriff Thomas Gilmore, the time was a long time coming. In fact, he often wondered if it would ever come to Greene County, Alabama. When it did come, it was startling in its completeness. In 1968, Greene County's population was 75% black. Its government, 100% white. By 1970, the government was almost 100% black. Sheriff Thomas Gilmore and probate judge William McKinley Branch, who led the marches to get the vote, are now the leading county officials.
I've tried to dignify the office of sheriff in this way. Sheriffs, many sheriffs now and the sheriff before me try to operate by putting people in fear of them. When the sheriff came into your community, you had a problem, and somebody was going to jail. Now, that's the only way that I remember the sheriff growing up, is that he put people in jail.
10 years ago, when we used to march down the street here, plenty of days I leave home, I wouldn't look to get back alive. Walking down the street, you know, you could just feel that atmosphere of hostility existing.
I got beat up, and at the time that I got beat up, I was recognized as a leader in my community, and if one would do that to me, think what the police officers were doing to people on isolated roads and people in these various communities away from town there.
As soon as we gained, I say, dominance in voting strength, we went to our white constituents and asked them if they would go along with a 50-50 slate of officers for candidates for office. And of course they refused to do that. And we had no other choice but to run and elect a complete black slate.
Whites felt that I would do to them what the white sheriffs and police officers had been doing to blacks.
If whites fought hard against the blacks, none fought harder than Ralph Banks, a member of Greene County's oldest, richest, and most powerful families.
I felt the world had just turned upside down. And then I realized that whether I liked it or not, but it was here, and I had to accept it. I wanted to stay here. I lived here all my life. I didn't plan to leave.
Now, of course, after we were inaugurated, I needed a county attorney. And our present county attorney, the Honorable Ralph Banks, was on the other side of the street. And what I mean by that, he fought hard against me. And of course, I went to him and asked him, I said, Mr. Banks, what about being our county attorney? He said to me, he said, you mean to tell me where I've been fighting you, that, you know, I fought you toe to toe. I say, in a county, a state, a country, people who have the political area at heart and the people at heart, once the election has been decided, they bear the hatchet and come together for the common good. And that thing pricked Ralph to his heart. And he consented to come over and be our county attorney.
And we established a friendship, trust. It's just grown over the years.
The law says that the sheriff is supposed to protect people's lives and their property and their guests' lives and property. It seemed to me that the sheriff, given the responsibility that he has, ought to be able to help people better their lot in general. You're not going to be able to get any aid or any assistance from anybody?
Well, I told them from the beginning that I would not be able to pay the bill. It's impossible. And they told me that they would help me file an SSI and see if I could get any aid from that so that he can get on Medicaid. In about 2 more weeks, if the surgery heals up on his back, they'll place him for me in a nursing home in Demopolis paid by Medicaid.
Okay. Well, if I can help you at all, just give me, you can call me at home. I'll drive over to the house and I'll do what I can here. And we'll do what we can for you.
All right.
What kind of worm you say you call that, Brother James?
I call it the army worm.
Well, it's usually based on cotton leaves and
usually
stuff.
attack cotton, but it look like these things attacking everything.
You got a bundle of them. You need to go up and get some of those folk from the extension service here to show you how to treat these guys or how to get rid of them, because you don't need that fellow on your phone. You know, and if you have some information, if you have access to a extension service, you know, you can take the worms of the problem that Mr. Chambers has and take it to the extension service in Utah and get those people out here to do something about his problem. That ain't got nothing to do with law enforcement, but you know, to me, it does.
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. This honorable court is now open pursuant to adjournment. Judge Sarah J. Harper presiding. There will be no smoking, talking, or any disturbances tolerated in this courtroom.
You and I, as you know, have separate functions. You decide the disputed facts, and the court provides the instructions of law. It is your sworn duty to accept these instructions and to apply the law as it is given to you. You are not permitted to change the law or to apply your own conception of what you think the law should be.
As a Cleveland, Ohio municipal court judge, Sarah Harper presides over civil and misdemeanor criminal cases. Although comparatively few in number, blacks serve as judges on every level, from the small-town justice of the peace to the nation's highest judicial body, the Supreme Court of the United States.
The case now in hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as you shall answer to God. Yes.
I practiced law for 14 years on my own after going to law school, where I was the only black female in the school, the first one in the history of the school, and the only girl in my class. After that, I always wanted to be independent and not work for anyone. So I decided that I would have my own office, practiced law on my own for 14 years. Then when in our community a black mayor was elected, we'd been childhood friends, he asked me to come and work for him. When I thought of my deep love for the law and my enjoyment and the pleasure I get out of practicing law, I had to think before I decided that I really wanted to be a judge. But I feel that in our country, with 220,000 judges in the United States, less than 400 black, less than 30 are women, black women, then I had a responsibility and a duty to not only accept the appointment, but also to do the very best job that I can possibly do.
This first gentleman is charged with assault on his wife, family situation. Apparently this is not the first fight. They have had previous arguments. There is alcohol involved, but the wife, interestingly, states she does not know why they actually started fighting. But
what about his record?
This gentleman does, yes. They're primarily stemming from this family situation.
How many children in the family?
There are 3 children, all very young.
Well, based on his record, we'll give him the maximum sentence allowed under the law. We'll suspend the sentence because he has no money to pay the fine anyway, and it would be the children would suffer and the family would suffer for the money that he would pay the court. And we'll make a condition of his probation that he'll have to seek treatment in his neighborhood community alcoholic treatment center. As part of this desire to bring to the administration of justice what some might call the black perspective or a different perspective, the black judges and minority judges in the country have organized. We now have a judicial council made up of the majority of minority and black judges in the country with 3 purposes in mind: to eradicate racism and sexism and classism in the administration of justice, to increase our number, because we are few in number in the justice system, and also to improve the competency and efficiency of all judges by our relationship with them in seminars and educational conferences. Marriage is as old as the family of man. It is the preserver of true love, the foundation of the home, and the bulwark of society. Now, Patricia, will you have James to be your wedded husband? To cherish him in his development as well as you do your own, and to seek through love, kindness, and understanding to achieve with him the life that you have envisioned. Now that James E. Fuller and Patricia A. Rapper, now that Robert Mitchell Jr. and Jalea Kamal have given and pledged their faith to each other in the bonds of matrimony and have witnessed the same before God and this company, I do, by virtue of the authority given to me by law, pronounce that you are husband and wife. I think of myself as a human, female, black person who happens to be judge, wife, mother. All of these things in a totality. Not with interrelated, but I never think of them as being separate or this is just me.
1966 brought a crucial test. Could a black become mayor in a major U.S. city? After Richard Hatcher won in Gary, Indiana, Cleveland, Detroit, Newark, Los Angeles, and 130 other cities elected black mayors, including Atlanta's Maynard Jackson.
Moses Day in Atlanta, and urge our citizens to join with me in paying tribute to this extraordinary young man, Edwin Moses. Congratulations. Give him a hand. What do you say? What do you say? Now, you don't have to be crazy to be mayor, you know, but it helps. And you just, you know, it's kind of almost like a form of masochism when you run for re-election as mayor. Now, there are different kinds of jobs in politics. The best in the country is to be in the U.S. Senate, in my opinion. The worst job in politics in terms of how much you really have to sacrifice of yourself, your time, your family, and so forth, is the position of mayor. You're smack up front, on that front line, the firing line. It never stops. You're on target 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And on the other hand, the compensation is that if you're in a strong mayor form of city government, as we are here in Atlanta, you can really see changes begin to take place because you can make your imprint. You can see your policies begin to take shape.
One of the first things we found out was that the existing facility was running at a phenomenal volume, 104,000 cars a day on a 4-lane highway that doesn't near meet interstate or freeway standards. Narrow shoulders, no merging lanes and so forth, rather circuitous in its alignment. Part of our challenge was to not only determine how to rebuild the freeway, but how to maintain 104,000 cars a day. So one of the prime considerations in our studies was to determine how we could rebuild it and also maintain this traffic, because obviously we couldn't cut it off. That led to the design, which is prominent now, is to connect Buford Highway to Spring West Peachtree Street using the existing freeway. It was making the existing freeway an arterial highway to connect these two facilities.
An elected official is, especially a mayor, is a deliverer of the goods, because in a city government, you are engaged far more in the delivery of basic services than one would be in a legislative position. On the other hand, from a black political perspective, I kind of shy away from being viewed strictly as a deliverer, because the expectation level of black people in this country is so high when an elected official who is black takes office that it's impossible to satisfy what black people expect and want within the time frame that one has to serve, a term of 4 years or even 2 terms of 8 years. However, in my opinion, there is a growing sophistication by black people. They understand this. We understand that we can't change everything overnight. The elected official's job is to be accountable, to be dedicated, to be honest, and to try to change the inequities overnight.
By the time the 1976 conventions to nominate the president came, black political strength had grown to a force to be reckoned with in both parties. It was strongly evident in the Democratic Party, where blacks came solidly committed to the front-running candidate, Jimmy Carter.
No question about it. I think the uncommitted strategy amongst blacks has just not worked. That's the reason I abandoned it. I think it's much more important to commit early even if you don't all commit to the same person. And then whoever emerges, there's somebody very close to him, and you can all rally together to establish an agenda that benefits everybody.
I think political power means being in there, investing in candidates, having right people in staff positions, and having some real impact on the policy decisions and the implementation of strategies.
But the session we had with him this morning, he was open, he was honest, he was above board. He said that he would go further than we expected him to, and I think he did. He reached out and said, "We want you," and that's different.
He particularly intends to provide the kind of necessary support, financial, moral, and otherwise, to make certain that we get black folks registered so that they can express their concern, and with a vote, that's the only way we can do it in America.
Though they had attended conventions before, blacks were more accustomed to roles in the background. But in 1976, they stepped forward to play significant roles in one of our country's most important political processes.
There is something different about tonight. There is something special about tonight. What is different? What is special? I, Barbara Jordan, am a keynote speaker. When a lot of years passed since 1832, and during that time it would have been most unusual for any national political party to ask a Barbara Jordan to deliver a keynote address. But tonight, here I am. And I feel that notwithstanding the past, that my presence here is one additional bit of evidence that the American dream need not forever be deferred. And I ask you that as you listen to these words of Abraham Lincoln, relate them to the concept of a national community in which every last one of us participates. As I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. This expresses my idea of democracy. Whatever differs from this, to the extent of the difference, is no democracy. Thank you.
Blacks spoke out, and America heard. Though their struggle is not over, their voice, once a voice of protest, is now a voice of participation. To many black Americans, it was an indication that the time had come.